Hi, it's Chris with Implied Music. Where to begin? We've been exploring the sort of fundamentals of music theory. And today I want to talk about something that's called the rule of the octave. It's sort of an old-fashioned way of generating chord progressions. But I'll tell you what, it's super useful. We can still use it today. It really helps our understanding of scales and of how chords work within them. So we'll just pick it apart. We'll look at the kind of classical approach to it and maybe come up with some somewhat under-the-counter ways of dealing with it as well. Well, if this is the second or third video of mine that you've watched and you're getting something out of these practices and getting something out of the community that we're building up around here, and you're not subscribed, now's a great time to subscribe to the channel. We're trying to build a community of artists, musicians, composers, arrangers, producers who are committed to expanding their understanding of their own music by becoming their own theorists. Well, to that end, I want to not disregard the past, and so I want to just touch base on kind of an old-fashioned technique. It's called the rule of the octave, and it has its roots in ground-based study. And if you want to do a deep dive over the course of the next 3 weeks on Wikipedia and the web and all your various music books, you can look up these things. Ground bass, partimento. We've talked about partimento briefly before. And out of that arises this practice, the rule of the octave. Well, the rule of the octave is a fairly simple idea. As we play a scale, and here, let's just go to the screen and talk. Each of these notes may be the bass note of a new chord. And we can also build chords on the scale as it descends. The major scale is a formula of whole and half steps. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, or two tetrachords joined by a whole step. Well, there's a classical solution to this, and let's take a look at it. Here's the sound of the rule of the octave as it was taught in like the 19th century. Now, I'm going to play it, and then we'll do a zoom in over on the right-hand side of the screen where I've written the bass note and the chord associated with it. We'll hear these chords in inversion, of course. So that's C, G7, A minor 7, F, G, F, G7, C. And on the way down, C, G, D7, G, G7, C, G7, C. So I was talking over it. Let's play it again and zoom over to the right where you can see the list. If you've watched a couple of my videos on diatonic chords and non-diatonic chords, you may have noticed that every one of those chords except the D7 chord here is diatonic to the key of C. And that's by design. It also makes it sound a little hokey, right? And yet it is awfully beautiful. Let's take a look at sort of how and why it works in this context. Now, you know that any note may be the root third or fifth or maybe seventh of any chord. So this C chord with C in the bass is very conventional. As I move to a D bass, I have a bunch of possible solutions, don't I? For instance, obviously, D minor would be a solution, but our solution in this rule is G7. And the reason for it is actually fairly simple. It's rooted in this kind of general guideline that parallel fifths are to be avoided in counterpoint. And I think it's not a bad, guideline for us to stick with it first. So continuing from the C chord, we've got a D in the bass, and it's a G7 chord. E in the bass, A minor 7, F in the bass, D minor 7. It could be an F chord too. I like the D minor 7. That's how I was taught. G in the bass, a regular old G chord. A in the bass, weirdly, an F chord, but it sounds good, doesn't it? B in the bass, G7, C. There are any number of other ways to approach that, right? Each of those notes, as I went up the scale, could have been the root, third, fifth, or seventh of any chord, as long as we're willing for it to not be a diatonic chord. Let's go down and look at the conventional solution. C, B is the third of G. Here's a non-diatonic chord. A is the fifth of D7, but it leads very nicely to G. Now, on the way down, I'm just going to have alternating G7, C chords. Here's my G7 over F. Here's my C. Here's my G7 again, and then back to C. And that G7C, G7C, tonic-dominant relationship is very strong in conventional harmony. Great, Chris, thanks. That doesn't do me much good, though, unless I want to write Billy Joel's Piano Man, right, which is essentially that. Tons of songs, by the way, use this trick. I'll just go ahead and say that. Let's write a new chord progression using the ascending major scale, but repurposing the notes. Let's see if we can get something good. C in the bass, it's the root of C. D in the bass, it's the third of B flat major. Why not, right? E in the bass, back to the C chord. It's the third of C. F in the bass, since we've had B flats, we had B flat major, let's have B flat major again. Now it's the fifth of B flat major. G in the bass, okay, it's the third of E flat major. A is the third of F, B is the third of G, and C. I just wrote this chord progression. Not bad, really. Let's do one descending. C, and then the B is going to be the fifth of E7 to A minor. Very pretty. The G is going to be the seventh of A7 to D minor. The E is going to be the third of C. The D is going to be the fifth of G. And then I'm home to C. Let's play it a little faster and see if we like it. It's a kind of a ballad sound. So C, E7, which is the 5 of A minor. That's what we get next. And then we're going to go to A7 to D minor. C, G, C. All right, I don't mind that at all. One thing about the rule of the octave is it tends to kind of resolve. Let's say I'm Billy Joel, or maybe it's kind of an Elton John sound, isn't it? Let's say I'm Elton John writing that. I'm not going to make it resolve. I'm going to go D to G. So and the whole thing starts again. Pretty 70s. I think in the 70s we used that kind of stuff all the time. Of course, I'm an old man. I'm like 65 or so. And that means that the chord progressions of the 70s and 80s are really lively for me. But the rule of the octave can be used in a lot of other ways as well. As a ballet accompanist, when I didn't know what to do, I'd take a cue from one of Bach's sons, C.P.E. Bach, who was a really one of the earliest classical composers, not a Baroque composer, who said, when you don't know what to do, just go to the rule of the octave. The rule of the octave was a foundational way of teaching and a foundational way of thinking about classical harmony, but it can be useful for us as well. There's lots of solutions. Any note, maybe the root, third, fifth, seventh, maybe even other things of any triad or chord. And that means that the sort of inevitability of a scale, you know, the way a scale kind of like wants to go a certain place, your ear is drawn to the inevitability of it. The inevitability of the scale can be used as a tool to validate or justify chord progressions which are surprising or a little bit like outside the norm. Non-diatonic chord progressions need careful preparation to make them work. Scales are an obvious way to do that. Well, I hope this has been useful. Like and subscribe. If you ding the bell, you'll be notified. And I'll see you next time.